Okay, you can title this one 5 Easy Power Settings. Kind of like 5 easy pieces, only without the diner scene with the toast and the chicken salad. Doing this in the 727, the FlyJSim 727, in Northeast livery, not Northwest, Northeast, also bought by Delta, because I wanted to clear up I just want to encourage everybody to fly this airplane because it's magnificent, but a lot of people might shy away from it because they're intimidated by it. What I want to do this flight to impress upon everybody is that it is really simple once you know what to do, and what you need to know to do is not a ton. And I say this because Mr. Lockheed, Mr. Douglas, Mr. Boeing, not a single one of them designed an airplane for super duper pilots to fly. They designed these things so that 50th percentile professional pilots with the proper training could fly and make a few mistakes flying and not kill anybody. So as a result, you'll find that these airplanes, all these airliners, if they've been modeled correctly, are stable, predictable, don't get you into trouble except in the sense that you fly a lot faster than a Cessna 172, but otherwise not too different. Now, I know what you're saying. Let me just say good night to my girlfriend. That was the ding you heard, sorry. She calls me Wabbit, and I call her Quail for reasons that are unknown to both of us probably at this point. But she's got a 5-year-old and keeps her busy. See you tomorrow? Okay. You might say, well, wait a minute, look at this. Or look at this. And look at all these switches. In fact, first of all, you have to remember this plane was designed to be flown by 3 people, and there was one person here at all times flipping these switches and minding these meters. But in reality, they're not very different than what you'd see on a 737. The 737 has, fuel pump switches, and they're here. And the 737 has generators and bus ties, and they're right here. The 737 has pressurization controls, and they're right here. 737 has auto brake switch, and that's usually over here somewhere. The throttle quadrant is virtually identical. The autopilot is down here instead of up on the glare shield. But on early 737s, they weren't. The radios are in the same place. There's nothing fundamentally wrong or fundamentally more different about flying this airplane. It has a certain amount of power, a certain amount of lifting capacity, takes a certain amount of weight, and responds in a predictable way to a certain set of inputs. And what we're going to do today is we're going to essentially fly this thing on the fewest number of inputs, because I find the biggest mistake that I make when I fly, especially when I jump into an unknown plane, is I'm all over the place on throttles. Because we're used to this. We're used to auto throttles, setting a speed, and you hear them spooling up, spooling down, spooling up, spooling down, and you think, well, I need to kind of do that too. And the fact is, you can never really fully do that without getting behind the airplane or up your own ass, because the airplane has a certain amount of inertia, and it takes a certain amount of time for engines to spool up, and it takes a certain amount of time for performance to manifest itself. And in actuality, it doesn't require that kind of fingertip delicacy to fly. Now, you've all driven with great drivers, you've flown with great pilots, probably, and there is a difference between ordinary pilots and drivers and extraordinary ones, but none that are especially pertinent to this airplane if you know the basics. As for this shit, well, just read the manual and follow the flow to start it up. It's just a cookbook recipe. If you really want to delve into which systems are connected to which and shutting off which one affects which controls, you can do that, but you don't have to. The APU has its own little panel, but it's no different from the thing that's on a 737 right up there. So none of this is complicated, but what we're going to do is we are going to fly this plane with 5, maybe 6 power settings, and we're not going to touch them. The benefit is that we're going to get known performance, and the other benefit is we're not going to have to fuck with it, and we can fuck with other things. We can look at an approach plate. We could talk on the radio. We can follow our normal procedures and flows. We can drink beer and burp, as far as that goes. And he says as he drops his phone and doesn't break the screen, and actually puts up a random series of characters up on the text messaging app. As he picks it up, it just says yap. I meant to send emojis, and I did. But it means that you can actually fly the plane better because you can concentrate on all the other things you might want to concentrate on when you're flying the plane, or even, heaven forbid, you can sightsee. But the point being is we're going to set 5 power settings. One is going to be takeoff power, which we'll determine using a little utility that's built into the airplane. And then climb power, which is 90%. And then cruise power, which I think is going to work out to be, we'll have to figure this one out in the air, which I guess it'll be about 60%. And then idle power, which we'll use to descend. Now, if we don't have to level off, we won't have to use a 6th power setting. But if we do have to level off, and we have to do it without having too many flaps out, in other words, if we descend too fast too soon and have to level off and motor around a little bit, probably at the altitude we're going to be at, and without having too much flappage out, or any, we're probably going to be no faster than about 45% N1, or we'll start going too fast. And we'll try not to use that. So we'll try and manage our descent well enough not to even need that. We'll be back to 5. And then the final one is going to be, about 72% N1, and that will yield us our approach speed at the flap setting we're at, with the gear out, at the weight we are, at the altitude we're flying at. It'll get us about a 3-degree glide path. And that's really about it. So on this plane, you can set your takeoff bugs this way. Now, we're not going to take off with flaps 20. We'll take off with flaps 15. It's a pretty short runway. Says 121, 121, 133. So let's bug it. You just say set bugs. It sets the bugs. And you can see it sets a V2 plus 15 here. Sets a 1 VR right there. This is our cleanup speed here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to set our speed bug for reasons that'll become obvious right about here, because that's about where we're going to end up climbing with climb power. And we will climb in IAS mode, indicated airspeed mode, in the autopilot, which is very similar to flight level change. The other complication with this airplane is that in some modes, the flight directory is not coupled to the autopilot. In other modes, it is, in the sense that in the approach mode, if you follow the flight director, it'll do exactly the same thing as the autopilot will. In a climb mode, it will not. In a nav-loc mode, it will in the roll axis, and I'm not sure if it does in the pitch axis, but we can figure that out. I'm going to tune up 113.6, which is West Hampton VOR, because it's just a nice thing to fly towards, so we can demonstrate how that works. On this airplane, to set the trim, you can either use the table here, or you can just click on that once and it will automatically set the trim, although I think, well, I'll set takeoff flaps on the way out. We'll reset the trim just to make sure it is correct. We'll be flying at flight level 200. It's a beautiful day. I've set some historical weather, so we don't have to really worry about anything. It's a known commodity. We'll be landing at Kennedy Airport, New York, on 13 left. We'll fly the Canarsie visual approach, so you get a nice scenic approach and a curving approach. And with known sort of mileposts, as it were, so you can gauge your performance also. Am I at the right altitude at this distance and all that? And we'll try and make it all work out. I just want to check to make sure I am still recording here, because I was using shadow play, and this is the third time recording this. The last two times shadow play crapped out, and once not shadow play, shadow play crapped out. I'm using OBS now. Once it crapped out on short final, and it was a beautiful landing, and the other time it crapped out in cruise, and it took the whole computer with it. So I believe we're 3019 on the altimeter. I can't get ATIS because it's old. It's old weather, so I have to use the weather app, the Active Sky XP app, to get it. Okay, winds are still favorable for the runway. They're going to be a little bit off our left side as we're departing. 3018 is the altimeter, as my British friends say, or actually it's the QNH, but ho ho ho. A lot of Q's in this, you know. In courses on VOR as QDRs and all sorts of things like that. I'm not sure they're used as much in the States as they are in Europe, but let's just make sure everything is still kosher, and we are fueled up, and we're going to make a little tight turn out of here. Northeast used to fly in and out of Nantucket, but they usually flew Fairchild FH227s, and every once in a while 727s, but not 727-200s. I think mostly the 100. This is a prettier plane. It's nicer proportioned. TWA flew both into Pittsburgh when I was a kid. My grandpa would fly in. My grandpa Murray would fly in from New York, from LaGuardia on it, and he would always tell me whether it was a 727 or a 727 stretch, which is the 200, of course. Let's see where we're going. Going here. Let's just do the sim pilot thing and get our taxi lights on. We'll squawk altitude right now, and actually should fix that. Everything else is cool, and actually these should be on RTO, and that's more or less all you need to do. Again, you can make this complicated or you can make it fairly simple, and it was a simple airplane when it came out. It was designed for quick turnarounds, short runways. It's built for LaGuardia, which at the time had runways of 6,000 feet and 4,900 feet. So this thing is built with triple slotted flaps that let's do the sim thing, get on our strobes, crossing a runway, and check the approach. I'm not flying online here, but never heights. So this airplane was really designed to do things that a 707 couldn't, and it had a nice big clean wing, as you can see by taking the engines off and putting them back. It was quieter. That's why it was called a whisper jet. It was not called a whisper jet because it was quiet from the outside. It's loud as hell on the outside. It was called a whisper jet because it was quieter in the cabin. And these things smoked like crazy too. These engines smoked the way some of the passengers did at the time. But pilots loved this plane, with the exception of getting a nice smooth landing out of it, especially the 200. But they loved this plane because it could go very fast at altitude. It could go very slow in slow speed flight. It could get in and out of small airports. It was nice to hand fly, especially for sportier approaches. Because of the speed brakes and high gear extension speed, you could descend quickly, very quickly. And in a way, airline pilots liked it when it first came out because it flew like a cross between a high-performance general aviation airplane and a fighter. So people had a lot of fun transitioning into this airplane. It had some ugly characteristics, deep stalling characteristics, but not as bad and not as crazy as, say, the BAC-111, which had to be fitted with an aggressive stick pusher, but this, generally speaking, throughout 89.99% of its flight regime, was docile and sporty and fun, and generally a pleasure to fly. So let's set runway heading on here. We'll depart in heading mode, and you'll see how this flight director works. Could have done this all sooner. We'll turn the flight director onto heading mode, and you can see it deflects when we turn it. And now to set a climb, you have to manually set a pitch, and we're going to set it to about 17 degrees nose up, which should do us fine. And let's do it to them before they do it to us. So we'll take the runway here. Check for interlopers. We'll turn our squawker onto TARA, and we'll take off the parking brake, and again we're going to use the first of our two power settings, which is going to be right about there for our EPR, and it's going to work out to about 97% N1. This is Orbix scenery, by the way. It's one of their earlier ones. It's done by the guys who used to do Blue Yonder, but they sort of became part of Orbix. Bill Womack, I think it is. It's a nice effort. We'll take this runway. We'll try not to take up too much space as we roll on it, and see if we line up okay. More or less we do. Again, we're going to have a little bit of a crosswind from our left. There we go. Now I'm going to lean on the brakes here, and we're going to set takeoff power before we start going because it's a short runway. Okay, so we'll creep them up. Make sure they're stable. They are. And we'll set takeoff power. A little bit of light forward pressure on the yoke. There we go. Now I'm not touching this. That's it.
80 knots.
Okay, we'll just relax the pressure very slightly. Got a little bit of that crosswind trying to lift up our wing there. Okay. I'm going to trim a little bit. Remember, when you're flying a big plane, don't over trim initially. Give the plane a minute to settle into the new trim setting. Okay, gear up. All right, now you can see we're climbing at V2 plus, and that's a little bit of a weird vibration going on. Oh God, I hope this thing doesn't break. All right, now in a second we'll start nosing down a little bit, and that's odd. I wonder if that'll come through in the recording. Looks like an interlacing problem. All right, we'll start to nose down a bit, bring our speed down. That is weird. I don't know if you can see it. Okay, down, and start to bring up our flaps. Now I'm going to relax the forward pressure because the plane's going to naturally want to settle. Now I'm totally hands off here, and we're accelerating, and I'm going to accelerate up to our bug speed, and then I'm going to go into IAS mode, and we'll climb at that in that mode. Nose is coming up because the flaps are coming up and we're picking up steam. And now I'm going to go into, look at that, everything is blurry. Gosh, I hope I'm not having a stroke. That would be a tragedy. All right, you see it's going to nose us down ever so gently until we get to that bug speed. Well, it's fine on the outside here. I wonder if it's my XP realistic. Well, anyway, let's turn to our northwest. Get in the heading select mode, hit Alt Cell to arm the altitude, and watch us turn. All right, well, it's not vibrating anymore. I think that's just an XP realistic effect. Now you notice that this is no longer set properly. Not it's set properly, but it doesn't function the way a new flight director would, which is that it would capture whatever the climb mode we're in. But instead, if you want to do it yourself, you can just, for situational awareness, set it like that. Now you'll see we're going up at 4,000 feet per minute. You'll also see that we are coming in on this VOR, which is Southampton or West Hampton, some frickin' Hampton. Anyway, let's do our flight simmy sort of things, which is that. And look, more important than getting your lights on and off in a real plane or a simulated one, I guess, is to make sure that your pressurization is okay and that you're not all about to pass out from hypoxia. So check that first and then go futz with your lights. And then go futz with your smokers and your seatbelt thingies. Disarm this. And you can see we are climbing like a mofo. Now, I'm going to turn us so that, well, you know what, let's find a direct, okay, we'll get us more or less direct to that now, and we're going to go into nav loc mode, and you'll see, not nav lock, but nav loc, or VOR loc, whichever you prefer. That means VOR, nav, or localizer. It doesn't lock anything, although it does, but now, I'm hearing it trim like crazy, so just for my own sanity, I'm going to go check and see what the autopilot is doing and see if it's trimming us beyond utter craziness. And it's not, but we'll just bring the power down to our more reasonable climb setting. And we're now on course direct to that particular VOR. And as we get closer to our correct altitude, you see Alt Cell is on and VOR Loc is on. That's what passes for an annunciator panel on this plane. It's not on some electronic thing right here. So you have to keep an eye on this. And notice that you also have to adjust the flight director. So I changed that to Nav Loc, and you notice now it should be more or less in sync with what the autopilot is doing. Now I'm looking at my trim here and I'm seeing that it is starting to creep nose down, but not excessively. It's hunting a little bit too. And so what I'm going to start to do as we get closer to altitude, we're still going up at 2,000 feet per minute. What I want to do is I want to start bringing that speed up. And what that will do is, if you do it slowly, we'll start to lower the nose, you see? And that means as we get closer to our stopping altitude, we won't suddenly go 0G when we pop into it. You can do it this way, or you can do it the other way, which is to pop into vertical speed mode and just set a lower vertical speed. So we're 1,600 feet away, and I'm just slowly creeping up my speed bug until the rate of climb decreases a little bit. It's kind of an ass backwards way to do it. Better way to do it might be just to do this. Pop into vertical speed mode, and you'll see it will capture the vertical speed you're at right now, or it should. And right now it's capturing about 700 feet per minute. We'll leave it at that. And we're going to get ready to use our third power setting, which again, we may have to experiment to find, but we'll find it. And that is going to be probably in the mid-60s. Now you notice how we're going much more nose down here in trim. We're also loading scenery, and that's because we're leveling off. And are my flaps all the way up? Yeah, they are. Just didn't look like it. All right, so 1,000 away. Should get an alert. There we go. Now I'm going to set standard here. And standard here. In different countries, different procedures, different airlines, different procedures for when you set standard. Some places you do it when you get to 18 or wherever the transition altitude is. In other places, you do it when you're cleared to it. Your mileage may vary. And actually, technically, it's a transition level because we're going to be at, flight level 200. There we go. 19.4, 19.4, and 19.4, and all set and checked. Now, what I'm going to do now is just turn off the flight director. And again, that doesn't affect anything except the flight director. Okay, 400 feet away, and we're climbing there at 500 feet per minute. I'm just going to nose down a little bit more. So now we just ease ourselves right into it. And you can see our speed is creeping up. And so let's start to bring our power back, because we're going to start to level off. And that will bring chaos. So down comes the power. And actually, almost as the nose comes down too. Am I in vertical speed mode? I am. Give it one last little bit of climb here. See, it's possible to over finesse it, and I just did. Now, last time I flew over this piece of missing scenery here, it crashed the sim. So I'm just going to now get back into heading mode, and I'm going to turn us to the north of that. And we do that by getting into that and that and that. There we go. And we should be turning, and we are. That's Montauk right there. That's Block Island right there. And we're in level flight. And we're leveled off. And so far, all is well in the world. We're just going to come up the north shore of Long Island, and then we're going to come into, you know what, my power is still too high. As you can see, this is going to get out of control here. We'll get a speed warning or something, a little clacker will go off. So I'm going to actually just bring the power down, and let's, you know, it's funny, I said mid-60s, I'll bet you that's just about where it's going to end up. And again, now, not touching it. So that's power setting number 3. Our approach power fully configured is going to be about 72%. And I've noticed the airplane, I'm using the experimental flight model on X-Plane, and it's a moving target. So it tends to float, and it tends to hang in the ground effect for a long, long time. So we'll try to take that into account. It also tends to be a little bit draggier and a little bit nose high at the correct approach speed, which all that means is that FlyJSim and you know, has to adjust their own flight model for whatever, however X-Plane winds up in its sort of semi-final iteration here. I'm just going to bring this up a little bit so I get a better sight picture when I land. I'm using X camera here. If you don't use track IR, and I'm not right now, you don't really need to, because it basically is there so you can still have view presets, but use track IR. So let's give us a few degrees now to the left here, and we'll just skirt the northern edge of Long Island, and we'll come right down the throat of the Throg's Neck, and over the Whitestone Bridge, and then over Central Park, and over the Verrazano, and out towards Sandy Hook. So how do we know this is a good cruising speed? Well, we know it's good cruising speed because we're not overspeeding and not getting a warning. We also know it's a good cruising speed because even if this were broken, at this power setting, our nose is here, which is more or less within a few degrees of the horizon. Some airplanes cruise a little bit nose up, some cruise a little nose down. Most airliners cruise fairly level or just a little nose up, because if you cruise a little bit nose down, it kind of creeps passengers out. It feels funny. But there are some smaller GA airplanes, if you're flying them pretty much as fast as they can go, you're a few degrees nose down, and it can certainly feel funny. So you know you're at a decent speed when the nose is right about there, when this is not overspeeding, and you know, obviously we don't, we're assuming we have an airspeed indicator, that we got a pitot tube that works, but even if we didn't, we would know from looking at our handy dandy performance tables that this plus that will yield this. So it's not an unreasonable thing. If you were flying nose level at this speed and your power was here, you'd have to start to suspect, did I leave the gear down? Are there flaps hanging out? What's going on? But with the airplane clean and the horizon here, and even if you didn't have these gauges here, and the power lever is about there, you could safely fly this airplane with almost no instruments, as long as you could see outside, see the horizon, and you'd be fine. This is how Air France 447 got in trouble. Admittedly, because it was at night and it was in storms and there were a whole bunch of alarms going off, but essentially they forgot that even in a plane as sophisticated as an Airbus 330, they could have stuck the power levers about somewhere, and they could have stuck the nose about somewhere, and even without any other instruments at all, they would have gotten safe level flight that wasn't too fast and wasn't too slow. And it's just that's the real tragedy of it. And before anybody says, well, you know, desktop pilot lecturing professionals, that's not the point. The point is that I can see how they could have gotten that wrong, because there are so many things in a cockpit when things are breaking, as they were in that airplane, that actually make it hard to concentrate and recall correct things like unreliable airspeed procedures. Because don't forget, by the time they started getting an inkling of maybe what was going on, there were stall warnings going off. There were caution panels blinking. There was the airplane behaving in a way that is actually correct and predictable, except it's not a mode the airplane was in that most of the time pilots get to see outside of a simulator, and I don't know if they simulated things like that or that particular combination of problems. So, you know, it's not a holier than thou thing. It is perfectly understandable why they got it wrong, and that's probably why some systems and some training needed to be redesigned and rethought, because it didn't adequately take into account things like the startle factor, you know, where boom, horn goes off, lights start flashing, airplane in weird attitude, feels funny, never seen this before. It's easy to do the wrong thing in the heat of the moment. One of the things they train is anytime you think you have to make a split-second decision, count to 3 first. And 3 seconds is a hell of a long time, actually, in the heat of that kind of moment, because time tends to stretch out a little bit. And that can be enough time to say, I don't want to do this, I want to do that. And I know I want to do that because. So, you know, again, we're getting way, way off subject. The point only being that it doesn't take a lot of all of these gadgets and gizmos to, on a clear day, fly this plane, as you'll see. Now, I'm going to proceed to botch the landing, I'm sure. But having said that, we'll give it the old college try. Now, I'm not really setting up any nav aids here, so I'm not really going to have the benefit of DME to do my descent planning. Well, you know what? Let's do it. Because you want to get a good sense of distance. You want to know when to descend, so we don't have to use that 6th power setting. And one of the things I can do is simply look at the chart and see where we are, and then start calculating, 300 feet per mile, have to come down, about 15,000 feet, so that's about 50 miles, and we actually can set up Colts Neck VOR, which is right close to where we're going to be flying out to and turning back towards the airport. So here, let me show you in the chart. Do I even have the chart up? I don't. Okay, good. Oh yeah, because I was worried that might crash the computer. All right, I'll get it on the iPad here, and that way we can use our DME to help with our descent planning. So again, we won't have to use that sort of level off power. I got level off blinds in my apartment. It's wonderful. All right, let's see. All right, Colts Neck. I'm in the wrong part of the map. Portsmouth. I'm definitely in the wrong part of the map. Boston. Come on, let's go. That all looks the same. All this New England crap. All right. Colts Neck is 1154. So let's tune that up right now. I think it's a high altitude VOR. 1154. Get into the habit. We're loading scenery here. Hence the lag. The animations in here are so good. Look at how the digits just jump just a little bit. Okay, we'll flip that over into the active and let's see what we got. I don't think, are we picking it up? Yes, yeah, we are. Okay, so we're 78 miles away and it is more or less that away, and that makes sense. And if we want to descend at about 300 knots, that means we have to come down at about 1,500 feet per minute, because you multiply times 5. Or I don't know why they said multiply by 10 and divide by 2, but that's multiplying by 5. I guess it's easier because you can just add 2 zeros on the end and cut it in half, but whatever. So we have to come down at about 1,500 feet per minute to do about a 3-degree glide, and we need to come down 15,000 feet, and we should do it in 50 miles to go down at that rate. So we're going to start descending we're going to start descending another 20 miles. However, since I don't want to use that level off power unless I have to, let's start descending a bit later and factor in the whole track length of our approach so we can try to make this a continuous descent arrival. I don't know if we can make it. I mean, if we knew the plane better, we certainly could make it, because heaven knows there isn't any traffic and there's nobody telling us not to. But let's give it a try. So we'll start descending later, and we'll take into account the distance we're going to fly, and we will try to descend later, and we'll do it at flight idle, which means actually we'll descend a little bit slower speed, which means a little bit slower rate of descent, a little more nose down though to make up for the idle throttle. I don't know. Let's worry our little asses off about how we're going to do it, and then we'll just eyeball it when we get there. How's that? So that's Jamaica Bay there, and that is Sandy Hook, where we're going to be flying out to, and Colts Neck is just beyond that. And we're about 60 miles away. We're chugging in pretty well. And again, we've used 3 of our 5 power settings. Possibly 6. Going on Mach 0.7, so we're cooking around for this low altitude. And that is, let's see, that's Fire Island right there. And this is Robert Moses State Park, Jones Beach. My mom's name is Joan, and of course it's spelled differently, but as a little kid I thought it was so neat that they named a beach after my mom. And that is beautiful Route 110 and the magnificent Long Island Expressway and the magnificent Sunrise Highway here. Totally magnificent. And down there is, I want to say West Hampton Airport, but it could be, no, that's Islip. That's Islip because this is Bayshore. So, yeah, okay, that's Islip. Or wait, let's see. That's Bayshore. Well, anyway, doesn't matter. There is Manhattan, and let's start coming down. So we'll set 5, and we'll see how we get on, as they say. We will roll off to idle power, or as close as we can without invoking the gear horn. And we'll start going down in vertical speed mode. And let's see how we do. Again, that's Sandy Hook, and that's Kennedy Airport, and we're pretty high. So we may have to do a little bit of fancy dancing here, but let's see. Just going to turn our flight director off, because all it'll do is confuse us, and let's see what our rate of descent is. Okay, off comes the power. I'm just going to see where the gear horn comes in. Should come in right about there. Yep. Okay. Now let's plan our arrival too. Plan our approach. We're going to do flaps 30. You never use 40 in this airplane, or at least a lot of airlines prohibited it because it was, well, it made the handling characteristics kind of ugly in some ways, especially in very slow speed ends of the envelope. Okay, so Colt's Neck is that away. And let us also bug. Now I'm going to bug a little bit faster than I ordinarily would, because I noticed that the airplane with the current flight model lands a little bit nose up. So instead of VREF plus 5, I'm going to do VREF plus about 8 or 9. And we're going to set we're going to set altimeter, which is actually going to hurt us now because it's 3017. And in a second, we'll turn towards Colt's Neck. Yeah, this is going to screw us a little bit. We may have to use the magic boards here. Ah, loading scenery. Stand by. See, the things you have to do when you don't even have a co-pilot, let alone a flight engineer. All right, there we go. And let's bring the nose down a bit more. Well, loading scenery. Shit. Please don't crash. All right, we will get out the old speedies. And we will aim our nose to the ground. Okay, now we're going to be descending about 2,000 feet per minute. And let's make a little gentle turn here. And we're basically going to turn towards this needle. Only not that way. Now I'm flying off the RMI instead of the HSI. We could fly off the HSI too. And I'm really going to eyeball it once I get around there. This isn't instrument conditions, so we are going to, well, first of all, we're going to do a little sightseeing there. Look at that. And that right down there, right there, that's where this, this YouTube clip is coming from. All right, so we'll line up right about there with respect to, look at that, that's almost perfect. There's an oil terminal right here, and we will turn right about there. I want to stay below 250 now. Let's get all our shit in order early. Do auto brakes medium. I want to try to make an early turn off. Bam, bam, there we go. All right, still have our speed brakes out, as you can see. And as the air gets thicker, they are slowing us down more because there's more air to bite into. Now, this is the way we're going to come in. We're going to go from there to here, around here, turn at the racetrack, and land right there. And we're still on the high side, but not bad. And now I can get in a notch of flaps. It's warning us we can't, but we can. We can at 240 and below. All right, well, it's complaining, so I'll take it out. And I think I know why it's complaining. It's complaining because the speed brakes are out. But it shouldn't complain unless it's, I believe, unless it's speed brakes combined with a lot more flappage than that. I think it should permit you to use slats and speed brakes at the same time. But you know, I live in expectation of being proved wrong, usually, most of the time. So again, we are now in flight idle, more or less, and so this is the fourth of our 5, maybe 6 power settings. Now, when we turn here, if we're at about 6,000 feet or better, then we're probably good, although that'll require some power. So I'm thinking maybe we should be 7,000 feet on the way back in. Here's the oil terminal that you usually turn over. And as you can see, we're tracking right towards Colts Neck, which is 23 miles away. Let me see if I can see Colts Neck. I don't even know what a Colts Neck is. Oh, it must be an inland neck of some sort. I don't know. But that down there is Coney Island. And that's Breezy Point, as in fly the Breezy Point climb. And that's Floyd Bennett Field, as in, I know a guy named Floyd Bennett. No, I don't know. All right, let's get everybody seated because we're good flight simmers. Put out your cigars, pal. All right, landing altitude is set. Good. We're at 200 knots, so I will bet you, let's do this. Let's stow the boards. Put in slats. Now you'll see first, for the first notch, it only gives you these outboard slats. And now let's do the inboards and flaps 5. Now I'm going to shallow off our rate of descent now because we're trying to do a continuous descent arrival, but I could get us a little too slow. So this is going to come up, this is going to go down. You know what? Let's make the turn now. We'll do a sort of base turn right here. Basically trying to eyeball a continuous path here, and I don't think I'm going to be able to do it. I think I left ourselves a little too low, but let's find out. Shallow out our descent here. And let's see where we are. Oh no, you know what? I think we may be able to do it fine. All right, I'm going to take the airplane now. And we'll get our gear down just around Floyd Bennett. Again, I'm still idle power now. And I really, well, we're going to need a little bit of level off power because I'm going to get ourselves configured where we should be configured, which is right about here. We are a bit high, and you know what? We might be able to make it here. As soon as the gear and the flaps come out, this thing is going to start to sink like a mofo. So we're higher than we would ordinarily be. We'd ordinarily be at about 3,500 feet here, but we're coming in a little bit high because, again, we only want to use our two. Oh hell, let's do this right. Make it six throttle positions because we're grotesquely high here. So let's get draggy, get on down. Yeah, no, misjudged it. This might not work, but now we are fully configured, and as you can see, it does not mind descending, but we're a little bit high because we really shouldn't be at about 3,500 at the Canarsie Pier, which is this right here. We should be at about 1,500. But see how draggy this is? Look at this. We're practically pointed at the ground. And we are barely above our V-app. So look at that. We might be able to pull this off after all. Now I'm going to shallow this a little bit. No, I don't think we will. Yeah, we're going to get slow. So here. Let's get an intermediate power here for a sort of level off. We're still high enough that we got a fighting chance, but this is kind of silly. So for this circumstance, maybe this much power. What I want to do is I want to keep it above the bug speed and not get too low at the same time. But as you can see, that probably won't be a problem. Remember, it's not a straight line to the airport. You have to add a few miles because we're basically going around a big bend. This is like a long curving base to final. And you can see we're about 55% N1, and I'm just slowly raising the nose here. We're flying this more like a glider approach, to tell you the truth. Okay, now that's our bug speed. I don't want to get below that. So let's bring in now our fifth or our sixth power setting, which is about 72% N1. And then again, I'm not going to touch it, and you'll see. All right, now we're in good shape. You'll see that first of all, the speed's not going to budge, and second of all, as soon as I get this set up right, we'll be sinking at about 600 feet per minute, which is about where we want to be. But again, because this has been flying at a little bit nose high, I've bugged a little higher than normal, or than supposedly normal. I don't know how else to describe that. We're very slightly high, but not by much. And we're sinking a little slow, so I'm just going to relax the back pressure a little bit. The speed will build, so I'm not at 72, I'm at about 74. Let me just bring that to 72, which is, after all, what we said we'd be. And right now, I'm almost hands off. And as you can see, we're going down about 600 feet per minute. And the airplane should be right around its bug speed, and it is. And again, I'm not touching anything. I'm flying this almost hands off. It's retrimming a little bit, but again, I'm not touching the power. I think we maybe have a little bit too much power. We're going to come in a little bit hot. And we're a little bit, yeah, we're not sinking quite enough. All right, so I'm going to just put the nose down a little bit and let the speed build. And I'll flare a little bit later. No, we're just about right on. Okay, good. Got a little bit of a crosswind coming, feels like from our right. Yep. Again, I'm not going to bring this in low like a lot of sim pilots do. Fly it the normal way. Now, as we get closer to the ground effect, I will roll off the power a little bit because of the floaty tendencies of this airplane in its present state.
100, 50, 40, 30, 20,
So, see it float?
10,
Okay, 3 in reverse. And switch to manual braking. And come out of reverse here. And I guess we'll be off at, what, Zulu Alpha. Oh no, the mighty Delta Bravo. Good, good. All right, so a bit of a float, as you saw. But not too bad. And again, basically 5.5 power settings. And that's it. And it made the flying actually easier because you're not chasing a whole bunch of different variables. It just, you know what it's going to do. And it pretty much does it. So let's take a look at it again. Now, on a day with more severe weather, you'd have gusts to deal with, and you'd maybe add some power here, and you tweak it there. And being really good pilots, of course, you would, do a bunch of those little tricks to kind of finesse things on and make everything a little bit smoother and a little bit better. And if you're climbing IAS mode, you'd maybe roll off the power a little bit towards your cruise setting as you reach that altitude, and you'd make it a lot smoother for the passengers. But this is ballpark flying right here. Now, speaking of ballpark flying, you'll notice even though our speed here is above our already elevated bug speed, you'll notice as we start to come in, we're more pitch up even than a 727 normally is, and so the landing is going to look excessively nose high. But what you got to deal with, at least with this flight model using this version of X-Plane, is that if you don't do that and you carry the extra speed and you keep the nose a little bit lower, in the present state of play, it'll probably float a ton. So if you want to put it down in the right place, then you'd have to take that into account. You just have to let the nose get high, and so be it. It kind of looks ugly. So that's where I reduced the power a little bit as we started to get into the ground effect. And here we go over the threshold. Actually, we're not bad here. That's about right, actually. But you see the float? Look at that. That's a bit of float. And a little bit nose high, but not too bad. I have a vague suspicion. Were my flaps in the wrong place? No, they were in the right place. Okay. Thought maybe I had one less notch of flaps than I should have, but I didn't. Everything's fine there. Go for the big old Y50 shot.
10, 20, 30, 40, 50,
Oh, you still get the call-outs. Wait, hold on. Do you?
50, 40, 30,
See, and the power's already out.
20,
Shouldn't have floated that long.
10,
Let's just see. Just see what our rate of descent was there and see how I fucked it up. Or if I fucked it up.
30, 40,
Start to round out at about a little below 50, so let's just see. See if we did that. Okay, that's about 700 feet per minute. Yep, there goes our round out. You notice we're just a few degrees nose high. That's about where we should be. It's about
10,
a bit of a thump because we flared probably just a little high.
10, 20, 30, 40, 50,
But again, this is ballpark flying. And this is the Hawaii 5-0 shot. Of course. What else? You can see we got a little crosswind going there that I probably didn't gracefully take out either on flare, but let's just see. All right, here we come. Yep, flared a little high and floated a little long. I should have just flown it more into the ground. Let's see where I went wrong.
10, 20, 30, 40,
Having the callouts to replay are really great. Very helpful. Okay.
100, 50, 40, 30,
Yep. Rounded out too high.
20, 10,
All right, I am a chronic high flarer, so hence the hard landing. But as I hope you saw, hence the easy flight. This is not hard to do. This is not hard to fly. This is a great airplane, and you will learn all you need to know flying it. And you know, next time around, I can only imagine how they're going to improve it, but I really don't know, because it's just so good, period, and it's so beautiful. And on that beautiful note here at Kennedy Airport, bid you farewell, see you next time, and give it a try yourselves. Bye-bye.